burning sun of the Wild West cast long shadows over the rugged plains, where silence was broken only by the distant lowing of cattle and the occasional whistle of dry wind that pushed dust into spirals across the earth. And in that silence rode a man hardened by years of loneliness and survival. A man whose name was Jedediah Cole, though most folks just called him Jed, a cattleman with eyes sharp as a hawk and hands roughened by rope, rifle, and reins. And on that particular day, as he rode slowly across the open field, herding his small group of cattle, he felt the usual peace that came with solitude, the sense that he alone was guardian of this patch of wilderness, where men rarely wandered and beasts ruled by instinct. But what Jed didn't know was that something unnatural for the West was waiting near the marshy edge of the riverbed, something that had no business being there, a massive shadow in the water with jaws that could crush bone and eyes that glowed. Above the surface, and as Jed's horse trotted closer to the waterline, the beast rose with a sudden fury that split the air. A hippopotamus, its skin thick and glistening, its roar more terrifying than any cougar or wolf Jed had ever heard. And for a split second he froze, his mind refusing to believe that such a creature, known only in tales from Africa, could stand in front of him in the American West. But there it was, charging with thunderous weight that shook the ground like an earthquake. And Jed's instincts took over as he pulled hard on the reins, the horse rearing back in terror, cattle scattering in panic as dust clouds rose, and the hippo lunged with gaping mouth, slashing upward with its tusk-like teeth, cutting deep across Jed's leg and nearly unseating him, blood rushing warm down his boot as pain exploded through his body. Yet the man clenched his jaw, refusing to let agony decide his fate, and with one hand he steadied the rifle strapped to his back, swinging it forward even as his horse stumbled sideways. And he fired once, the sound splitting across the valley, smoke curling from the barrel, the bullet striking the hippo's shoulder but barely slowing its advance. And Jed cursed under his breath, because this wasn't a bear or a wolf. This was a monster built of muscle and rage, a creature that didn't belong here, but had somehow found its way to his land. And now it was him or the beast. No lawman, no friend, no neighbor for miles, only the dry land, the cattle running wild, and death staring him down with eyes full of fury. So he fired again, aiming for its head, but the bullet ricocheted off the thick skull, and Jed knew he had only seconds before it crushed him into the dirt. So with raw desperation he leapt from his horse, rolling into the dust, grabbing the axe he always carried for woodcutting, his legs screaming in pain. And as the hippo lunged once more, Jed threw himself to the side, dust blinding him, sweat mixing with blood, and he swung the axe with every ounce of power left in his arms, the blade connecting just under the beast's jaw, sinking deep, the roar of the animal so loud it rattled his chest. But he didn't stop. He swung again and again, until the hippo staggered, groaning with rage, before collapsing into the dirt, its massive body shaking the ground like a fallen boulder. The silence that followed broken only by Jed's ragged breath as he stood swaying, bloodied but alive, staring at the impossible kill that lay before him. And for the first time in years, the Wild West felt like it had revealed a secret even he couldn't understand. But one thing he knew for certain was that he had survived, and survival was the only law he had ever trusted. The morning after the bloody encounter with the beast, the Wild West plains looked the same as they always had, dust rising with the wind, coyotes crying in the distance, and the cattle nervously grouped, as if they still remembered the terror that had scattered them the day before. But for Jedediah Cole nothing was the same, his leg wrapped in rough cloth soaked with blood, his muscles stiff with exhaustion, his mind replaying again and again the madness of staring into the gaping jaws of a creature that should not exist in these lands. And though he had slain it with his own hands, the thought gnawed at him like a rattler's bite. If one such beast was here, could there be others? He dragged the carcass of the hippopotamus closer to his homestead with the help of his horse. the beast's weight nearly breaking. The old wooden sled he had, built for hauling firewood, and the journey back was long and silent, each groan of the wagon wheel a reminder that he was carrying with him proof of a nightmare turned reality. And when at last the low cabin came into sight, its chimney smoking faintly against the horizon, Jed felt no relief, only the burden of what he now knew, that the West, already wild with outlaws, bandits, and beasts, had turned stranger and darker than any man could imagine. Inside his cabin, he collapsed into the single chair by the fire, staring at the flames as he tried to clean and stitch his wound, whiskey burning his throat and numbing his pain. And in the silence he heard his father's old words echo in his memory. "A man of the West stands alone, son. Don't expect no one to come saving you. Out here, survival is your own business." Jed chuckled bitterly, for those words had proven true yet again. And as he sat there, blood seeping through the bandages, he thought about the folks in town, about whether to tell them what had happened, but he knew most wouldn't believe him, and those who did would only panic. So he decided to keep the truth to himself, at least for now. Still, his conscience battled him, for if another beast appeared, innocent lives could be lost. And Jed had always carried a sense of responsibility even when he lived alone, a duty to protect not just his cattle, but the land and the few neighbors scattered miles apart who trusted men like him to keep watch on the frontier. That night the wind howled outside, the moon full and bright, and Jed lay awake with his rifle beside him, his hand resting on the axe that still bore dried blood. And in his restless half-dreams he saw the eyes of the hippo staring back at him, unyielding, as if warning him that his fight had only begun. And by dawn he rose with a decision made. He would not wait for danger to find him again. He would ride into town, tell the sheriff what had happened, and prepare for whatever new horrors the frontier might unleash. As he saddled his horse, the cattle stirred nervously, and Jed felt a strange heaviness in the air, a silence too deep, too watchful. And when he looked back toward the riverbed where the battle had taken place, he thought he saw ripples on the surface, slow and deliberate, as though something vast moved beneath. He spat into the dust, tightened his grip on the reins, and muttered to himself, "If they're coming, they'll find me ready." With that, he rode toward town, the horizon wide, the journey long, but in his heart he knew this was no ordinary tale of man versus beast. This was the beginning of a legend, one that folks would whisper about for years to come. And whether he lived or died, Jedediah Cole had already carved his place into the unforgiving story of the wild West. And to those listening now, to those who believe in courage, grit, and the fire of survival, remember this: the West is full of untold stories. And if you want to ride along on more of these wild journeys, make sure you stay with us, subscribe, and never miss the next adventure, because out here, every day is a fight, and every tale could be the last.